with my panel this morning. And speaking of panel, let me say a warm welcome to my two guests in the studio this morning. I've got Shamima Muslim in the studio. She's a deputy presidential spokesperson. Shamima will also tell you, once a journalist, always a journalist. I've also got in the studios with me Rodalyn Imoru Ayana. She's a public interest advocate, always full of energy. And when I tell you, Rodalyn is a force to be reckoned with, I don't say that lightly at all. Ladies, good morning. How are we doing?
I'm fine. And yourself? How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I'm not too bad. It's the month of March. It's Ghana month. Yeah. So a lot of gobe, banku, fufu, all of that.
Though. I think you're on this healthy.
Shamima,
I'm surprised.
Relax.
The example she started giving us.
Why are you doing that?
We're not on the healthy side.
Why are you doing that? Who says gobe is not healthy?
Okay, no.
Gobe is healthy.
But I also, you ladies are also in the month of Ramadan as well. So let me not talk too much about some of these. Let me be mindful of who my audience is. How is Ramadan going, Shamima?
Your gobe.
Red. I don't even know when it became gobe.
I don't know when it became, because it's just supposed to be fried plantain and beans. And now it's come to fried plantain, beans, fried eggs.
We have sausages.
There's a whole nine yards.
We have gizzard. I'm seeing shrimps.
And all sorts of things. Gobe has changed. It has become not gobe anymore.
Rich gobe.
We've elevated gobe status.
Rich contra and poor contra in school. So rich contra, it was the gari with shito, with sardine and baked beans. Then your poor contra is just your gari and your shito. So I'm sure gobe has elevated.
Right now, Shamima, yours is rich contra.
No. Right now, there's
levels don't change.
Nothing like 4 months food.
He wants to tease me. Even coffee broke man is no longer for the broke man.
So expensive.
Very expensive.
Well, that's something we should definitely table for our next discussions, thinking about a great
the cost of
food.
Just the ordinary Ghanaian dishes, not just food in general, but the ordinary Ghanaian dishes. It's getting too expensive, and it's all the hype, you know.
Pinky.
Yeah, the hype.
So it's the hype.
It's the hype. It's the hype. You know,
it's the hype.
It's the hype. It's the hype that makes the prices go up like that. So you find people when they start to talk about gobe, you know,
wache.
Now wache is beyond
packaged.
People. Now it's packaged, and all that.
Minimum.
So
pricing.
we should stop hyping.
First, you could buy wache how much ever you want, right?
Oh, yes.
But now there's minimum price, and you cannot get below.
Even cocoa.
You can't do below 4 cedis.
It's incredible. In my area, wache, you started from 15 cedis for your standard scoop. It's crazy.
Well, and wache comes with, for me, I think that we're playing with our lives when you go to a wache joint and you're eating the salads. And stuff like that, because wache should just be wache without those salads. I'm okay with the spaghetti, but I'm not okay with the salads.
I thought you were going to mention spaghetti. Well, I was going to have Third World War.
No. I'm okay with the spaghetti, and gari and whatever. But I have a problem with it's dangerous because if you don't wash it well, you understand, bacteria still stays on it, so we end up getting
and you keep it
typhoid.
long,
Yes, you keep it, and they keep it in these glass bowls and stuff.
Yes,
it actually can be dangerous.
I see. So, and of course, with our water bodies, what we use to wash our fruits and vegetables with, it's something we've tabled also for our second conversation. Shamima, let me come to you very quickly. The first topic is about journalists, but there's an issue that's being alleged by Minority Leader, Honorable Alexander Afenyo-Marking. He says he's visited the former Bank of Ghana governor, that's Mr. Ernest Addison, whose house has been raided by national security operatives.
Right.
What can you tell us about this situation? Then we'll get into our topic proper.
Okay, so I'm yet to get to the office to receive a full briefing on the matter. But I mean, what I can say generally is the fact that there are some actions going on, there are some investigations ongoing, there are persons of interest who will be now and again invited to help the investigation processes. There are means of gathering information. One of those means is to visit the homes of these persons of interest. I would just say that we should execute these, processes with due recourse to due process. And once we are doing that, we should have no problem. However, we should also be mindful of how the minority would always deliberately position themselves to be averse to any action that government takes in its quest to demand audit and accountability of the outgone government. And we know that they have done quite a lot of such, sometimes exaggerating the issues, sometimes, trying to deliberately misrepresent the action that is being taken. And sometimes they don't even come to the equity table with clean hands, because if you go back into a not so distant past, you would have examples of worse scenarios, and there are colleagues of his on the floor of Parliament who have shared very harrowing experiences of how they were dealt with immediately they exited, power in 2016. And those stories, I don't think, should be repeated, and I'm not sure we are repeating. If you look at the instance of the former Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, which is really the first case that we all witnessed, and some concerns were raised about, invading, that was the descriptor used, the home of the former Finance Minister in his absence. And even there were apologies on the floor of Parliament on the side of, the NDC in government.
Yes.
So if you look at the posturing of NDC when it's in government, it's always, good and well-intentioned in comparison to what we have seen of the nature of the, the now opposition whilst they were in government.
That's your position, Shamima.
That is the objective position on the base of the facts of their behavior whilst they were in government and the cases they never extended to their political opponents.
So you see, objectively, if we take ourselves out of the scenario and we juxtapose the two regimes, you say that the NDC, in terms of when it comes to these investigations,
is more respectful.
It's more respectful.
It does not mean that there wouldn't be instances where you would think that, okay, maybe it could have been done differently. And I'm saying that when those instances happen, even sometimes at the expense of, at the risk of annoying or provoking your base, you would find leaders from the NDC sometimes condemn what is condemnable in their view, or accept what they believe might have been an overreaching or an excess in the execution of a genuine, investigation. Sometimes you would find those voices. In fact, most times you find those voices. And within our regime, you have found it. Members of Parliament who have criticized members of the NDC, and embroiled in some, fracas in Parliament, who use the floor of Parliament to condemn those actions. Give me examples of their Afenyo markings, even in the face of, public outcry at, their behavior. Give me 2-3 examples of key members of the opposition conceding to wrongdoings.
You say that the minority simply doesn't want to concede, even when the evidence is
They never do.
There.
When they do you know what they say? They say that assuming without admitting. And if you go back to
that's because there are too many lawyers in the House of Parliament.
I'm not sure
the language is very legalistic.
No, it's not a legalistic. It's deliberate. It's deliberate. They always use the caveat. Even if we did that, did you?
Now they say that
if
they
you did say that,
forward.
yes. No, I'm saying that. Don't come and tell us that even if you did this, should we continue? Did you do it? Can you tell us that you did it? And can you tell us the mistakes the lessons you've learned from that mistake? Do you even accept that it was a mistake? They don't. They don't, my dear sister. And you know it for a fact that they usually don't. In all of these conversations we have had about transitions, about, how government, uses its powers when they are, investigating matters, they never, about letting go some stuff,
right.
Even after you had given them, indication that stop these illegal promotions and illegal employment.
Right.
We gave them respectfully through the medium of a statement that we have heard these things happening. Stop them. What did they do? They parried it and came back with a counter.
They said you guys need the hands for 24-hour economy. They said they're only ensuring you have all hands on deck.
Don't repeat their misplaced propaganda and their mischief, which is obvious, because their intention is to entrench themselves within the system so they can have leverage to sabotage. We will not let them.
You say that is the grand agenda.
It is the grand agenda which is playing out, just like we saw their grand agenda to appropriate, state resources through their Ejapadia document. That grand agenda to destabilize.
Hotly contested by members of the NPP.
Well,
they say they've got nothing to do. In fact, they say you planted that.
The facts do not bear them out. Well, you're in the media sphere, aren't you?
I am.
And you must have heard the lady who is from their camp, very close to their family, who has openly said that she's the source of that document. They've not done anything to her till date. She has openly, a former member of the New Patriotic Party.
What's the name?
Known member of the New Patriotic Party. I'm sure you heard that video. I will send you the name. She has openly spoken about it. And she knows. Miriam knows
Once
this lady.
Once Rhodalyn enters the chat, things get very hot.
Knows the name of this lady.
Shamima, let's round this up for me.
So what I'm just saying is that the reset agenda is on course. His Excellency John Dramani Mahama is a leader with conscience. At all times, he wishes to shepherd this nation with little chaos and with little distraction, as much as is humanly possible. There will be times that maybe in the execution of some, due process, there might be some missteps. We are not a party to not recognize when mistakes are made and redress them. But what we can tell the general public is that there's really a new heart to leadership, a heart that is very in tune with the people that it's leading, and a heart that wants the best for this nation and wants to, lead a nation that is fair and just and equitable to all Ghanaians, even those that may be found on the wrong side of the law. Because even convicted criminals have rights.
That's right.
That must always be respected and enforced. And so you would not have the person of His Excellency John Dramani Mahama to seem to be flagrantly abusing rights of citizens. It won't happen. It won't happen. But due process will happen. Individuals who are individuals of interest will be pursued in all the available, options to the security agencies to gather their intelligence and to take the necessary action. So we can bring the accountability that we promised the good people of Ghana, for which they voted us into power by such a resounding mandate.
Thank you for your thoughts on this one, Shamima. Of course, it's unfolding. I know Honorable Afenyo-Markin has shared some pictures as well, so we give you, we'll come back to that if need be, if there's any more to say on that particular issue. But I'm sure you've also cited this judgment giving in the United States against former MP Honorable Kennedy Ejapon to the tune of some $18 million US. I mean, that's not the focus of our conversation, but at least we use that as a basis to expand the tentacles of the conversation, especially where now the judiciary, I would say, has come under fire once more, with many people asking the question, is it possible for the average journalist to get justice in Ghana, or do we have to go overseas? Shamima, your thoughts, please.
Right. Okay, so in fact, I want to take some time and speak on this whole issue. And I know you're going to raise Manasseh on the line as well. I heard from the producer. What I'm going to just say to this is that, when we speak about safety of journalists and we speak about impunity against journalists, I've said consistently that there are some indicators you look out for, in your country if you're to measure the level of impunity and also the institutions that ensure the perpetuation of that impunity. The judiciary is at the heart of any academic and practical conversation about impunity.
That's right.
Because ultimately, the seat or the avenue to seek justice is the judiciary. And globally, if you read a lot of the UNESCO publications, if you read publications from international media agencies, even our own, within our own country, the reports from Media Foundation for West Africa, for example, they have a recent report that they published in 2020. It was between December 2019 to 2020, and they reported 79 violations against, journalists. More than half remain unresolved. Many of them at the courts are yet to be resolved. So there's no justice yet to those cases. Majority of those cases have remained unresolved.
Yeah.
And the avenue to resolve those matters is in the law courts. So when judiciary is unable to deliver speedily cases of violations against journalists, the perpetrators of those actions feel they can go scot-free because there's no avenue to hold them accountable. They also believe that they have influence over these courts or judges, to be fair, and that even if you brought us, and it's always a power struggle, because you would always find that contest between big business or big politics or big politicians who seem to have their tentacles very wide and far. And so when you have a matter as a lone journalist, without the resource or the influence of the people you're seeking justice from, then your justice never comes.
Because it's expensive also.
It's delayed, beyond reasonable. And sometimes many of these media houses do not have the resources to sustain, the court action. So you'll be frustrated till you decide you're not even going to court as an avenue for redress. There's also another issue with the stakeholders that are also at the culprits, if I may add. They also usually include security agencies. So there are matters in courts involving security agencies who also overreached, their minimum force rule and ensured that they, abused some citizens and some journalists. There are those matters as well. Again, the issue of influence comes in when the police that is supposed to, prosecute criminal cases is in itself involved in the charge of criminality. You and I know that there will be some real gerrymanderings to, as much as is possible, stretch, the process to the point of non-resolution. So we have all of these stakeholders that must come around the table, because again, it is just beyond, it goes beyond the boundaries of Ghana. When your press freedom index is really poor, it affects a lot of things, even your business climate.
Really?
Yes,
because
it is.
Investors are concerned about that?
They are concerned about that. Investors need to know that your judiciary works, that your laws work. And if you can abuse journalists who are your fourth estate, then they businessmen, you can do worse for them. So sometimes we do not see how an atmosphere of press freedom, because the press is like the fulcrum through which citizens represent their voices, or channel their voices. They are supposed to be the representation of the people, also acting on and for the citizens in demanding accountability from the other, institutions of state and government. So if your press is oppressed, nobody else would feel safe in that country, because really, what power do they have to tell their story? The press that has the platforms to tell story, to investigate matters, to, bring those issues to public domain, if they're being oppressed to the point that many of them self-confess to be self-censoring. And I think that was one of the negatives of the outgone administration, where independent studies came out with the findings that press freedom, that there was increasing high-handedness, by the leaders of the outgone administration, and that media freedoms were being rolled back, and trust in accountability institutions were also seeing an all-time low. So these were observable facts, and when they add it to your profile as a country, it affects you in so many ways. Even your stature in the Committee of Nations, the respect you would command in the Committee of Nations is all eroded. The capital you can bring into it. They said money doesn't like noise. So if every day, journalists are fighting with, with the leaders of the day, money will flee from your country. So we must see the interconnectedness of a greater environment of freedom of expression, because when press is free, it's also an indicator of how the society is generally free to be able to engage and speak out and demand accountability. Whilst I'm at it, when you come back to me, I would like to use this opportunity to speak again, in as much as we are promoting press freedom, to also educate the citizens on media literacy, that they will be able to understand what fake news is, what disinformation is, and what misinformation is. I say this because all these actors can become agents of fake news. So the politicians can become agents of fake news, security agencies, citizens, even media can become agents of the dissemination of fake news, as well as misinformation. Sometimes we find the media equally misinforming the general public, So you would know when I come to the conversation that misinformation may not be fueled with malice, because maybe people just didn't have the full benefit of the fact. But disinformation and fake news are fueled by malice. So
that's deliberate.
It is deliberate, and so I will just give those definitions so we take this opportunity. And this is because just this week, I myself have been a victim of fake news, where a fake online portal published quotes attributed to me with my photo, at least 2 in successive days.
Putting something on X about that.
On X about that. Completely fake. I have not giving any interview in that subject matter. So that is malicious publication intended to court public disaffection for the individual. And we, as the consumers of news, must become very quickly aware of how the industry works, so that when you see some of these things, you know how to check for fake news, and you know how to be more deliberate about what you consume, and most importantly, what you reshare when you come back.
Thank you, Shamima, for laying that foundation for us. And it's very important, Shamima, especially when you talk about misinformation, disinformation, especially with the rise of artificial intelligence, what we call AI. And sometimes the articles look so believable because they can actually make it look like it's coming from your page, or that you have posted it on X, even voice, even video. Some of our own journalists here have fallen prey to that. So the lips are moving, but the content that is coming out of the person's mouth, they never said those words. So we all have to be very circumspect. Rhoda, let me come to you on this issue of journalists. But just before that, Shamima weighed in on this piece of information as shared by Honorable Afenyo Marking about some sort of raid, he says, on the house or the home of former BOG governor. Shamima says it's a reset agenda. Does it sound like a reset agenda or a tit-for-tat agenda from where you sit?
I would like to say good morning to our cherished viewers, and a very special good morning to the people of Boko, and to encourage them to stay firm and stay steadfast, and that all will be well.
Thank you for that, Rhodelyn. It's very important what's happening there. We need to put more of a spotlight on it. And sometimes down south, we're trying to make heads or tails of it, but we need to get closer to the action to really unravel and bring to light what's going on, to understand especially the genesis and the nuances of the issue.
The damage it does to the human, the human factor that is being destroyed because of this misunderstanding, and the way women and children are going through trauma, and it's affecting them, and they might live with this trauma for life. So sometimes I try not to take the time off this program to speak about it, because that is not on the table.
Right.
But occasionally you have to speak about it.
Absolutely.
Just for people to know that the excesses being committed by the military in Boko is not right.
Okay.
And military is not trained to beat up citizens that they are out there to protect. And I know that the Ghana Armed Forces is a very disciplined institution with very wonderful, well-trained military personnel that are comparable to any other military in the world. And therefore, if some few miscreants will go out there and leave the training behind and decide to just exert excessive force and destroy the lives of innocent citizens, I think that we all have to wake up and condemn it in its entirety.
Rodeline, thank you for that.
So I'm just looking at what happened to the BOG ex-governor. It's unfortunate that this should happen anyway, but I suppose it's part of the national security investigative methods. Some of these methods we may not understand, but they know why they do it. Because for me, when I read it and I got the hint that, oh, they were looking for a vault to maybe open up your vault and show us where the money is. And, you know, it sounded more like a joke, because this is about 3 months since they left office. And I don't think that any person would keep money. If I had the money, I would keep it in my house. I don't think so. You wouldn't keep it under your bed? No, I wouldn't keep it under my bed. Because, you know, this kind of information has been out there, that they are building vaults in their homes. They are putting money in. Who is building a vault in their home? The supposed criminals, political criminals. I see, that's the alleged word on the street. Who had access to money. The word on the street is that they have monies under their beds, they have monies in their ceilings, they have monies in their water tanks, they have monies in wells in their homes, they have monies in all sorts of places. Do you begrudge anybody for thinking that these allegations have some weight? No, I don't. I don't, because I have cited videos, not in this country, but I have cited videos or pictures or watched TV of some African countries where investigators have found monies in grave sites and in polytanks and the likes. And I do know that we are not so different from Nigeria. We are just close to Nigeria. Once it happens in Nigeria, it will by all means happen here. Oh, Rodeline, you can't say that just because our Niger brothers and sisters Niger brothers, no, we learn everything. You know, when you talk about Niger, you talk about Ghana, it's the same thing. We're twins. We're twins. Because we never had these small kiosk and things. They brought it when they came from Agege. They brought that to us, Agege kiosk. You understand? And all these mini Evan, so many things we've learned from Niger. We don't take all the good things. We take the bad things as well. And I'm looking at a situation where out there people are thinking, people just believe that, oh, we'll go to their homes. You know, you should listen to people on the streets. It's like, we'll go to their homes because the money is there. Is it because of what we've seen, for example, because of Cecilia Dapa's case? Cecilia Dapa's case. When the OSP went to a home, recovered some monies and all of that. Is that what is fueling this idea that fueling the idea there's that money under the bed, in the ceiling, everywhere? They can't. Walls. In walls. In all, is that something you are telling us? In hotel rooms owned by... Yeah. So these people have changed the positions of wherever they put those monies. They have changed the positions of wherever they put those monies. I mean, if it's me, I wouldn't be so stupid as to keep the money in my house when I know that the first place you're going to come is my house. You get me? Is that an exercise in futility then for security personnel to go? So. Do you think it's for the optics? We're here now. Yeah, it's just the optics, and also it has a psychological effect on the person. You understand? Because the next thing is that this is maybe just the first phase. The second phase is to pick the person up. And during the interrogations and things, maybe that is where you find where the money is. It's always been that case. It's never, the money is never found where you think you find it. You understand? Because people have this feeling that, look, I heard people come from Togo to build safes and things in homes. You know, even the artisans that are good at this craft. They're blindfolded, they come, they do the work in the middle of the night, do everything and leave so that you don't identify the house. Are these conspiracy theories fueled by chatter on the street? They are not conspiracy theories. They are things that people have done. Because now my Facebook page is really active. I have been asked whether I would want one. Unfortunately, I don't have that kind of money. Somebody has actually approached you to ask if you want a secret safe. Exactly. In fact, some of the messages on our Facebook, and do keep them, they said, Madam Host, please be serious. Were you not here
here when Cecilia Dapa's home was
Yes.
raided. I was here.
Yes.
Rodalyn has the full scoop on what's happening on the streets. Please continue for us.
So the whole thing is that people do know that these people have the monies. But as to whether the monies are still in their homes, you understand? Because I heard people saying, look, we will go and sit in front of their homes to see the cars that are coming out and take the numbers and follow them, just in case they are taking the money elsewhere or whatever elsewhere. And I am saying that by now, nobody will be keeping their monies in their homes because they know that you will get to their homes. It is when they are interrogated, when they are invited and interrogated, that is where you get to know where the money is. So Jakpa is just doing what is normal. It's not anything that is beyond them. That's their job, to find ways and means to recoup this money. And I'm very sure that part of these monies also kind of like brought up the oral idea, you know, apart from the looting, official looting. There are people also that people feel have also done certain things and are keeping their monies at home because of money laundering laws. They cannot take them to the bank anymore because of they can't transport them out.
Okay.
So, and it's not everyone that has connections to be able to say, I'm taking the money out with a diplomatic passport to maybe say the Maldives or somewhere or Guyana to go and put it there. So the only thing that you can do is probably take it to your village and put it under your grandmother's bed. You understand? So our monies may be sitting in somebody's water pot in a village or under a bed or in somebody's cocoa farm somewhere with a pot on it to identify that this money is there. So they will need to do a lot of investigative work. It's not going to be easy to get the money. It's not.
Okay.
So if they think that by rushing into people's homes, they're going to get it, they're not going to get it. They won't. Yeah, they won't. So,
is that what they said? That they are going to look for money?
Yeah. The thing is, by opening the vault, what are they opening the vault for? Documents and stuff. But,
So,
you know, and it's like,
so many
but the
different things can be in the vault.
general idea is that dollars and gold bars are stored in the BOG.
But I'm sure the investigative agencies will know. Will know that people will not be keeping money in
Governor's house. Oh no, they will know. That's what I'm saying. That this is just something like.
So maybe they are looking for something that they have not told us, which they could find.
Yeah, they could be looking for some documents of some sort. But that's what I'm saying. You know, Shamima, my late father, I always have a story. Yes, was arrested for treason. And by the time they got to our house, we had, if there was any document,
It was gone.
it was gone.
Were you tipped off
Yes.
that they were on their way?
Yeah, we knew that they would come. As soon as they were arrested, we knew that the next thing was going to be a search in the house.
Yes.
You understand? And by that time, we had everything else, whatever, whether the document had anything to, we had taken everything. We swept the house. You understand? So these things are there. And after doing all those things, the next thing is to invite you.
What were you hiding, Rodalyn?
We didn't know what we were hiding. All that we were looking at was any document. Any document, because we didn't know what it was. You know, they were going to be looking for. So anything that was a document, that was in his room, that was in a briefcase, that was anywhere, let's take it away. So by the time you get to my house, it was already buried in the garden. You get me?
I get you.
Yeah, so things like this, it takes a whole lot of investigating to actually be able to identify and be able to retrieve stuff, you know, if you want it. And I don't think that the BOG boss is stupid. I don't think anybody. After this, you can go to every minister's home. You won't find anything. But it is just to give those people an idea that we are coming after you. So the next step is the invitation. And that is where you get questioned. And then probably when you break down, you can tell them where those things are. Yeah.
So really, where you get the juice is when you start doing your interrogations and asking the pertinent questions, so that even before security operatives go to whatever home it is they wish to visit, they've done their calculations.
Oh, they do know
already. They know what it is that they're after, or what it is they're seeking to achieve by venturing into said person. So
and so you know. So the whole thing is, everybody now knows that they'll come. They'll come in search us. And that alone, the psychological trauma alone, if you do have something, for some people who are very weak in their thoughts and very weak as people, some of them will just break down and say everything.
And there's confess.
Yes, and say, look,
lead the way to the trail.
Yeah, because they don't want to be hurt. You get me? You don't want to. But my advice is that in as much as we're running after people, let's treat them with dignity.
Yeah.
We should treat them with dignity, because at the end of the day, they are part of us.
Absolutely.
And we are also in governments. And so if anything should happen to us, maybe in the next 12 years, we might be facing the same thing. And we don't want a situation of tit for tat. You did it to me and I did it to you. So handle them with dignity, because they are just assumptions, they are perceptions out there.
That's right.
But we have not gotten evidence about it.
Thank you, Rhoda Lynn, for your thoughts on this one. I'm sure that there'll be more coming out that we can sink our teeth into. Let's come back to the issue of press freedom in Ghana. It's one that is a recurring theme, and it's one that I don't think we should ever stop talking about. I'm sure that you've also had a chance to listen to what happened in the U.S. I believe it was on the 13th of March when that judgment was made against former MP Kennedy Ejapon. He has to cough up some 18 million US dollars. What does that signal to you that that Ghanaians seem to believe that unless they go abroad for certain issues, they simply cannot get justice in Ghana? And I know when we talk about the judiciary, we have to do so in a delicate manner.
Exactly.
We all have freedom of speech. However, when it comes to critiquing the judiciary, we've got to do it in a way that is careful, that is respectful and constructive, because it is the last place that we all run to when we're seeking justice. What are your thoughts, Rhoda?
Unfortunately, in Ghana, it's not the last place to go for justice unless you belong to a certain class or a certain group. When I heard about the 18 million being awarded to Anas, the first thing that came to mind was, whoa, where is he going to get the money to pay this?
You thought, what an amount.
Yeah, what an amount. And then I read a little bit about what had happened. And then I remembered the suits in Accra. And I remembered also the judge who sat on that case between Anas and Kennedy Ejapon. The insults, the apparitions, the kinds of things that were told or said about Anas. And finally, I think there was some 4,000 or 40,000 punitive cedis. And I'm like, what happened? What just happened? You go to your own country courts, you are insulted, you know, you are belittled. Not only that, but it seems like people want to expose you to danger. And then you leave and you go to another country, and people really do sit and listen. They don't know you. They are not part of your culture, but they listen, and then they realize that, no, what happened in your country is not the right thing. First and foremost, Anas felt that they had exposed him, his life, the threats, they had defamed him, and he had taken it to courts. Meanwhile, Kennedy Ejapon is everywhere. TV radio, I'll deal with him. I'll let him take out his mask. If I get him, I'll beat him to pulp and all that. And you ask yourself, why should an individual, a politician, have the guts to sit and threaten another person, more so a journalist who's doing his job? So at the end of the day, you ask, are the journalists safe? Because this same person, Kennedy, had come on his TV station and said that anyone who knew the late Ahmed Swale, beat him up or whatever, he's willing to pay for it. The next thing, the person is dead. And yet, in this country, nothing has been done to Kennedy Ejapong. So when I read this, I said, no, there's something definitely wrong with our judicial system. Unfortunately, there's not much we can do about the judiciary because, like you said, we have to criticize them with caution. They are the last hope for most Ghanaians. But I'm sure they will tell you that people have lost faith. People are now dealing with issues themselves, taking the law into their own hands, because you know what you're going to get when you get to courts, unless you are from a particular class. So the politicization of our judiciary by the last regime is really hurting us. When I say politicization, I'm talking about people that were known to be MPP members that had been brought in into the judiciary from the Supreme Court down to the lower courts. And when we look back at the cases that were brought before them, the judgments that came, and the one that still haunts me is the fact that a birth certificate does not make one a Ghanaian when you need that same birth certificate to get a passport as a Ghanaian. So that for me is no. But when you look at the journalists in this country, generally, I think that they are the ones that have not been treated fairly at all. As the fourth estate of the realm, you come up from the executive, who are very well taken care of. You come to the legislature, very well taken care of. Judiciary, very well taken care of. How about the fourth, the journalists? Nothing.
No.
They are not paid well. They don't have any good conditions of service.
Nope.
They are virtually poverty-ridden lots. And you ask yourself, should we as a country be proud of these people who are supposed to disseminate information to us to enable us live our lives? Media houses are owned by different people.
That's right.
The state alone cannot employ all the journalists that are churned out. And so private sector has also come in. There's a Ghana Journalists Association. We are in charge of all journalists.
That's right.
And we are expecting that they should be the ones to be fighting for better services and better conditions of service and remuneration for the journalists. But unfortunately, journalists are not well paid for that dangerous jobs that they are doing. They are doing very dangerous jobs. If you see where Asari Erasmus
right.
goes to.
You mean in terms of Galamsey?
In terms of Galamsey.
Investigative pieces.
And I ask myself, how much is he being paid to do this kind of job? He has a family. He could be hurt at any time. And he has been hurt a few times. And then you look at Menasse, who had to flee for just investigating things that affect our lives. He had to flee to South Africa or somewhere. And you look at Abugri, I think there was another Emmanuel Abugri in Bolga who wrote about the corruption case concerning some public officers. And he also had to be transferred from Bolga to Accra for safety. You know, there have been so many instances of journalists being maltreated, you know, and yet nothing is being done. So for me, I think that the one thing we do know is that the journalist knows everything, but to keep alive, the journalist doesn't say. You know, they are measured in the kinds of information that they let out to the public because of safety.
So what Shamima was saying, the self-censorship.
Exactly, the self-censorship.
Would you say that it's rife in Ghana?
It is.
We're holding back a lot of information,
a lot of information
for fear of our lives.
For fear of our lives. We are holding back a lot of information. Even for those of us who come here to talk. Even for those of us who are not journalists.
You face intimidation?
Oh, yes, you do face intimidation occasionally.
Yeah.
And you know that there have been situations where somebody calls me and says, oh, Madam, I have some documents for you to have a look at. I've been trying to push this document and it's not going. And I think that the public has to know. And I collect this document and I have to consult one or two people. And then I'm told like, hey, don't touch this document. because if you touch this document, you're a dead goat.
I mean, point blank.
Point blank.
Told that if you get involved in this, you could lose your life.
Yes, I have seen this document. It has gone round, and don't think that you're a big head, so you can take this document on. Just forget it.
And in turn, have you then backed off because of
yes,
what
I have. I have backed up from speaking about so many things. You understand? When I come and sit here and I want to even speak about situations in Boko, I am very measured. You understand? I am very measured because out there, I am recognized, but I don't know the others who might not be happy with what I will say. So I am very measured in what I say. How much more a journalist who has done the investigations, knows what is happening, but for fear of his or her life, decides not to say anything.
And in fact, not to slight talk you, Rhodalyn, as we do the show, we see a number of comments that trickle in as the show is going on in real time, and even on public platforms, we're not spared at all.
Exactly. You get me? So you're not spared anywhere. And therefore, we have to make some efforts to make sure that journalists are safe in this country, that they are well remunerated, and that they can go anywhere, source for information. Look, if you ask a few journalists, even when it comes to the Rights for Information Bill, you still have challenges. Some journalists still have challenges getting information because the public servant is not ready to let go of information that is supposed to be public.
In fact, sometimes they're happy to pay whatever fine there is
instead of going
not
public,
give the information.
Why should how much we pay the president be a secret? I want to know. Why should how much we pay a minister or whatever be a secret? After all, it's our money. They are supposed to be as transparent as possible. But in Ghana, you can't even do that. No journalist can go and say, so, Mr. Minister, how much are you paid? So what they do is they go and investigate and they bring out snippets, small bits, and then some other people take it up and then we discuss. You don't think
these days we're a bit more open with that? MPs have openly come and told us what their take-home is. I mean, they don't normally add the allowances for various things, but at least we know their base pay.
Yeah, we can know their base pay, but the allowances is where we would want to know. The allowances. I mean, journalists have done a great job for this country because they go in there and they bring us all the information. How would we know that some people are collecting such huge sums for dress allowance, entertainment allowance, dog allowance, and all those things? We wouldn't have known if the journalists were not there to probe into these things and bring them out. So journalists are an important and very important part of this government system, and also an integral part of our lives. And we have to treat them with respect. You understand? But having said that, journalists also, by themselves, will have to also have the courage to sometimes stand up and speak, like people like Menasse and others are doing, and us come out. And people should also be willing, because that job is a job that you have taken and you know the risk factors. You get me? So I always tell people, I said, if I were to do journalism, which some time ago I had wanted to do, I would want to be someone like Christiana Mampo.
Okay.
To be able to go anywhere, face the bullets, go under the tables and come out and speak about it.
You're very brave.
You get me? To speak about it. So journalism in this country is not being given the respect that it deserves. In the 60s, when we heard of Cameron Dodu, we heard of all those other people, we respected them. They were people that you say, well, this one is a journalist. Hey, have you heard of Cameron Dodu? He wrote this. And everybody wants to read. You know, we had so many other people that don't come to mind immediately. But Wole Soyinka was here. Wole Soyinka was a writer. That's part of journalism. Wole Soyinka was so respected. You understand? You see them and it's like, you want to go and even, oh, hello, how are you? Our own Joris Wattenberg, a writer, not a journalist specific, but a writer. He didn't go to journalism school. You meet him and you are so excited to probe his mind. But now, it's like, people don't seem to recognize the fact that the journalist is a very important person in our society.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I think that they will have to make us begin to see them in that light again. You need to let us see them in that light again, because most of us are looking at, we are admiring Menasse, we are admiring Anas, we are admiring certain people, but we just can't have these few people. I'm sure there are others doing it. Even on social media, we have another guy, you know, those who go around looking for
right.
social evils and stuff. They're all doing their bit. And if you know how they kidnap them and they beat them and all that, and yet no court has ever given any award to any journalist for being beaten. You're doing your job. You go to a government function and the journalist is just getting ready to take a picture and he's being shoved left and right. Why? Allow the person to do their job. The person is asking a question that nobody understands. You know, you find public officials shying away from the journalist, and then the next day, so I don't want to talk to him. Who are you to tell the journalist who wants to listen to you and give out to the public that you don't want to see him or you don't have time? You must make time for us to get the information. You understand? And it's because they belittle them. And I think that it's about time they stood up for themselves and tell them that, look, we need to talk to you, and I want to talk to you because I want to get information to the public. You understand?
Yeah.
So these are the things. And one thing that I have noticed is that a lot of females are also going to journalism, and I'm so happy about that. But I just hope that they would ginger up
So we need more women in this
Women
space.
are
You know, it's very difficult.
They usually come at the base, but
they just slide off into public relations, and then they go and sit
you
in some
two are
of the-
here, you've been doing this for a long time, but to get other females on board, they say that it is too hot a climate,
It
a
is.
political climate,
Yeah, it
to
is.
freely speak. And like I said, you'll be moderating a show, and I mean, as the show is going on, somebody has some very hot, very, very hot, very hot commentary to also go along with that. But we forge ahead because we do this for the greater good. So, Rodalyn, you say that for journalists, they need to be bold, but you've also outlined a number of reasons why it is difficult to really be bold. So how do you marry the two?
Well, you have to find a way of marrying the two.
Yeah.
You will have to find a way of marrying the two, because at the end of the day, we can't all go back and sit down and just decide and say, let it happen.
And leave
And
the
leave
arena
everything.
to the
No,
fringe
we
elements.
We can't do that. We need to be able to speak out, and we are looking at the journalists. That when I don't get something, I try to get a journalist friend and say, Charlie, what is happening?
What's the latest?
What's the latest? You know, have you heard this and that and that? And then I also share what I also have, and that is how we are supposed to work. It's not easy to come and sit here and talk. It isn't.
At least Rodalyn this morning, they said Rodalyn,
What did they say today? They've said good things about me.
it's a mixed bag. It's a mixed bag. But they said they say you've done justice to this particular topic. A few more there. Yao Fabri says, without journalists, how do we hear information that is happening around the corners of this earth? When you talked about disclosure of allowances and all of that, Samuel Isifu says, when MPs were to decide their ex gratia last December, they asked journalists to kindly excuse them.
See?
That I know they were
That's not right, is it?
they were united in. But a lot of comments, though, agreeing with the fact that journalists also have to be bold. Richard Fiavlo says, this isn't just about journalists, it's also about citizen safety. For those who are quite opinionated, they also come under some fire. This message from Evan says, Helen, we must take a collective and bold step to clean our judiciary to serve us better. Finding justice in Ghana is now compared to seeking a passport to hell. Wow, very scathing. He says the Attorney General's proposal of public tribunals is a sure way to start, and I think it's a good initiative. Now, he says the NTC majority in Parliament must sit up to start with. Kind regards to the ladies in the studio. Shamima, let me come back to you. I see you've been busily noting down some points when Rodalyn was speaking. We're still on the topic of journalist safety. Then we'll move on to Galamsey and talk about the LI 2462 that's now in the spotlight as well. But Shamima, what do you add to the conversation?
Right. So as I think using the Anasis, example, it's an option that we should explore more often, especially those who have been at the receiving end of unnecessary abuse for just trying to get their work done. We should still continue to exercise the option of, judicial redress. It remains one of the most effective avenues. So if you look at some of the other things we need to do to be able to stem, the tide of impunity, if you read UNESCO reports, it indicates that at least 955 journalists have died in the last decade. They've been killed in the line of work, and a lot of these cases have not seen resolution, and that's really, really very high. And 2022 remains the deadliest year for journalist safety, which saw quite a number of attacks against journalists globally. Again, as I've told you, in the Ghana situation between 2019 and 2022, there were 79 reported incidents. Of course, to be fair, within from January up till now, there have been about 3 incidents involving 4 journalists, but those incidents were perpetrated by security agencies and some Galamsey operators who attacked journalists. So I'm sure into the next, study, these incidents would, be captured. So again, we must look at the legal and regulatory framework. In Ghana, we seem to have all the proper regulatory framework. So we have Media Foundation for West Africa that's supposed to, CSOs, like Media Foundation for West Africa, that, keeps their eye on the ball and gives us the studies and the trends. But we also have our right to information, law, which is supposed to be a safeguard measure in accessing information. Because half of the time, some of the risks to our work come from the ways in which we try to access information.
Right.
So a right to information should make that part of our work, which is a very important part of our work, easier to be able to access public information for a lot of our investigations that we should be doing, so we don't get ourselves involved in, unsafe, methods of acquiring investigation. It also has to do with the regulators, like the National Media Commission, for instance. How is it working to sanitize the environment? The Media Association, Ghana Journalist Association, how we're mobilizing our numbers so we can, be bold and we can protect our members and we can advocate for better welfare, for our members. So there are quite a number of things to be done. Also, again, at the base of it is judicial accountability. Everything we're speaking about, being bold to do your work, you're confident if you know that worst case scenario, you will receive justice. Okay. If that confidence is eroded, the boldness won't come. Eventually many would opt to do the safe side of work. And that's why we are not seeing a lot of Anasas and Manasas emerging, because the costs to their individual person and family for the kind of work that they do is not attractive.
And the actual monetary cost,
yes,
to chasing justice.
Exactly,
yeah, it
is enough to deter many people. So you would see that our investigative journalism ecosystem is depleting. We don't have them, and that's really the crack journalism. That's really where the big stories, the things that you and I will not uncover by writing a letter to the Right to Information Commission would give us. There are a lot of things, the deep, dark workings of government don't lend themselves to easy, easy viewing or seeing. So that has to be done. And also to deepen media CSO engagements. We've seen a lot of progress that has come as a result of CSOs supporting the media, because sometimes when you speak for yourself, people don't hear you. When independent agencies speak about your experiences. So media CSO and academia, last year or 2 years ago, the School of Communication Studies published the State of Media in Ghana. There's a UNESCO-sponsored publication on the state of media development in Ghana, where every media person should have access to those publications, so that at least you can understand the system you work in, and then we can, collaboratively work to expand our freedoms and also enforce our protective and safeguarding measures as well. That is also important. And also collaboration with international agencies. Sometimes your government does not listen to you until the international agencies or international press, Freedom Index publishes a report. RFI, Reporters Without Borders, publish their annual report, and then governments, it's all over the place trying to play defense, So there's some value in those collaborations, and that has also helped Anas a lot in his quest to seek justice for a lot of the injustice he perceives himself to have, you know, gone through. And when we see the outcome of the Essex County case like this, it just reinforces the notions we have about our judiciary. So yet again, our judiciary has been dealt a blow. Let's hope that they will take it in good faith, that the deepening perceptions of bias, you know, and injustice, you know, in the delivery of justice, you know, on their side, does not do their image much good, and they need to do some work to reform that. But again, to my big issue this morning.
Yes, and round up Shamima, please, on this one.
Okay, about countering the fake news industry.
Yes.
Again, we as journalists in this era of social media, we face a lot of threats. And the Internet of Things has come to stay with us. We cannot do anything about it. But we can ensure we build ourselves to be able to identify and stay on the right side. There are fake news stories that come up that have logos of established media houses, like Media General. You have faced it. Yes. So we are all in the same boat. So the media organizations must invest in, you know, interventions to protect their media platforms. One of the things to do is to verify your pages, which many of our media organizations have done.
That's right.
But to also have an ongoing surveillance of, you know, the internet, to see who and how your name is being used to perpetuate fake news.
Right.
So like I said, let me ask our viewers one question. So if a former information minister like Kojo Opon Nkrumah, who knows or should know the workings of government, comes out publicly, consistently on several media platforms to say that the Honorable Minister of Government Communications, Felix Kwakye-Ofosu, and Shamima have been given 78 million Ghana cedis to do government communication work, would you describe that as misinformation or disinformation? So hopefully your viewers should answer.
I was going to answer, but it's a place that we can get go
but what would you describe that as?
I would describe that as, is that misinformation?
It is not misinformation.
It's disinformation.
It is disinformation.
And I say that because I heard Honorable Felix Kwakye-Ofosu actually address this in Parliament, and give a breakdown of actually where those monies are allocated or will be allocated, so that, yes, if he says that the money has been given, it's been given to him, but really it's the agencies under him that are receiving these monies.
So it's not misinformation. Number one, fake news is completely fabricated.
Okay.
It has no basis in facts. Somebody sits in their corner and cooks up a story. I gave Shadrach one of their flyers. If Shadrach would show it to your viewers, they would see what I'm talking about. Right now, if you scan social media, some 2 news portals in the last 2 weeks have been at the forefront of publishing complete fake fabricated stories. Ghana Today and News Africa with a K. So anywhere you see Ghana Today flyer with a quote, please treat it with contempt. It is most likely a fake story. Now, misinformation is you share some information by mistake because you did not have the full benefit of the fact. And half of the time, misinformation is reshared. So you get some information and which you haven't verified, and so you repass it on, and you don't have any bias against anybody. You innocently pass it out, and it is not correct. That is misinformation. There's no malice behind the further dissemination of that information. But when you come, and often you spread it through ignorance because you either don't know better, you don't have any, you know, quality information on the matter. It's what's trending of the day. And we give a lot of misinformation around health issues. A lot. You know,
so that's like when COVID came. They said if you drink 2 glasses of apple juice, you'll be cured. That's all misinformation.
You get a lot of that
see, you don't mean malice. You even consume the information. Sometimes even you take up some of the advice that information is given to you to ignorantly to do. But this information on the other side is false.
Okay.
It's false information with intent.
It's deliberate.
And that intent is malicious. So in the case of Honorable Kojo Opon Nkrumah and Dr. Gideon Boako, who actually held a press conference, who have been in that role before, who was aware that under the Ministry of Information, he defended the budgets of Information Service Department, GNA, and had worked with the GBC, knowing this particular information, and yet sitting on national TV to say that 2 individuals have been given 78 million to do government communication. That was malicious and it was intent, and that is disinformation. And so what you do with this information is to expose the lies and let the people, judge them for the mischief that they wanted to invite all of us, to participate in. And that's a key example, recent example
Thank you for
of fake news and then disinformation. Let me also quickly add
20 seconds for me, please, so I can get onto the phone lines and speak with Richard Kumado.
Okay, then just do that.
All right, and we'll come back to that. Shamima, thank you for that. It's very important. In fact, we had this very conversation a few weeks ago on New Day, helping you sift through misinformation and disinformation. And as you can tell, it's something we have to keep on learning as a people, and it will certainly sink in. But let's go back.
I like to do these things often because, for example, I realize that we need to actually, as part of media literacy, we need to teach citizens how things work and how government structures work. So 2 days ago, I put a post on Facebook and asking my followers to tell me the difference between Office of Government Machinery and Office of the President. Please go and read. 90% of the responses were wrong. And yet, when you don't have knowledge, then you are easily disinformed or misinformed, because somebody will just come and say that the Office of the President has been giving 2 billion Ghana cedis, whereas they know that the Office of the President is a passenger in the vehicle of Office of Government Machinery, which vehicle has about 21 to almost 30 other passengers in it. So different entities that come onto the Office of Government Machinery all make up the budget that is allocated to the Office of Government Machinery alone, which includes the Office of the President, which includes the Chief of Staff's office, the Vice President's office, and some other, entities under that particular office.
Good to know.
So
very good to know.
It's so that you counter misinformation and you don't become complicit in anybody's proclaimed agenda.
Very important.
I think communicators within the presidency have to be proactive when such information goes out.
Absolutely.
Because until now, nobody would have understood that this contains.
And I mean, if you hadn't,
because we all just take it that it went to the president's office.
And I mean, it was
complete fabrication.
It was also useful to listen to Honorable Felix on the floor of Parliament to actually break down what exactly these monies were going to. He talks about the agencies that he superintends over and how this is
30 under the Office of Government Machinery, but under the Office of Government Communication, we now have the defunct Ministry of Information entities, which is GBC, GNA, and Information Services Department. And together, their staff is over 2,500 staff. And the budget covers their compensation, which is salaries and allowances, their goods and services budget, and their CAPEX, which is their capital expenditure. They are aware of these things. Now, 4 entities under national security.
All right.
The research development, the national security. Yes, well, because these are very important things for the public to know. So the Ministry of National Security is no longer there. But there were 4 entities, major, entities under them. The National Security Office itself, the Research Department, which is our intelligence staff based outside of Ghana, the NIB, and then the 4th one, which is the National Signals Bureau. Between these security agencies are over 7,000 staff. And their budget, it was colossal. Between the 7 new entities that we absorbed at the Office of Government Machinery, together they are doing more than 75% of the entire allocation to the Office of Government Machinery.
I see. Well, this is something that we can also table because I think it's quite meaty, quite weighty for us to break it down. But we do have to talk about Galamsey before we go this morning. And we'll be discussing some recent interventions that are being made by the Lands Minister. We are also joined now on Zoom by Awula Sewa. She's the coordinator of Eco-Conscious Citizens. She'll be live on our Zooms very shortly, and she has been very vocal, especially about LI 2462 and whether or not that should be revoked or simply repealed. Rhodelyn, let me come to you on this one, and just very briefly about regulation. The specific regulation that has been in contention in the House of Parliament, Regulation 3.2 of LI 2462. Now, that gives the President the discretion to approve mining activities in globally significant biodiversity areas. Now, this provision has been challenged by CSOs in courts as they argue that it contradicts existing environmental policies and laws, including the Forests Acts, Minerals and Mining Act, and the Ghana National Land Policy. Now, CSOs want this power completely curtailed, citing concerns that it has led to a surge in mining applications in forest reserves, including areas that are meant to be protected. Rhodelyn, this has been going back and forth in Parliament. The minority says that they need certain things to be in place before they can fully support this specific regulation being repealed. And once we get onto the phone lines and we're joined by Awula Sewa, she will say that, in fact, the entire LI has to be scrapped, not just the particular regulation. If Awula Sewa is on Zoom, let's say good morning to Awula. Good morning.
Morning.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us on The Big Issue on New Day. We're talking about LI 2462 and Galamsey in general. We're also hearing from the Minister for Lands, Honorable Emmanuel Kofi Boa, that post-December 7th, mining licenses will be revoked. Let's start off with that. Is that a step in the right direction? What do you make of that?
Well, revoking the mining licenses is a step in the right direction. But what about the licenses that were issued prior to the date? And our whole contention has been that there is no monitoring and enforcement. That has been our whole contention, not just the fact that it didn't go through the right process. So assuming they go through the right process and they are granted licenses, and then you don't monitor. So the license is asking him to go to spot A. He goes to spot B and he's mining. Nobody is checking. So we have said, because our mining regime is so weak, and we're not enforcing. That's why we asked for a pause in small-scale mining, not because we wanted to discriminate against small-scale mining, but to say that there are thousands and thousands and thousands of small-scale miners. With a weak monitoring regime, we don't know who's doing the right thing, who's doing the wrong thing. So pause it. Once you get your act together, find out those who are going according to the parameters of their licenses. With the big mining companies, there are fewer of them. So if you want to monitor, it's easier to do so. But with the thousands and thousands of small-scale miners you have, and some of them, their conduct is just the same as the illegal miners, it makes things very, very challenging. And now, then regarding LI 2462,
yes,
we are not jubilating. What the president promised to do when he was in opposition was to repeal. Repeal means that you take away the act completely. It's no longer there. That is not what is being done. What was laid before Parliament, and of course the opposition was being mischievous, what was laid before Parliament was not a repeal but an amendment, which means that you are looking at certain sections and removing them. We are saying that the totality of the law is not fit for purpose. We had focused on sections 3.1, which allowed the president to give consent for mining in globally significant biodiversity areas.
Recording in progress.
Yes, Awula, please continue for us.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. That's all right.
How terrible the law was. But obviously, we are saying the whole law is not fit for purpose, and the whole law should be revoked. So it's somewhat disingenuous to promise to revoke the law, and then we find out that what you were trying to lay before Parliament was not a revocation, but an amendment of certain sections. So that is disappointing.
Right, Awuda. So you say, in fact, the whole LI should be repealed, not that certain specific regulations need to be modified or revoked?
Absolutely. In opposition, His Excellency the President promised to do so. You may recall that in the run-up to the elections, demands were made by CSOs. We asked for a state of emergency in order to go to the forest reserves and remove the illegal miners and their equipment. We asked for the revocation of LI 2462. We asked for a pause in community mining until we could get our act together. We asked for the repeal of all mining licenses in forest reserves. And we asked that all those named in Professor Frimpong Boateng's report should be investigated, prosecuted, and if found guilty, their assets should be sold and used towards the reclamation process. The president himself, when in opposition, promised that he will revoke LI 2462. So it's difficult to understand why we've been dragging our feet, and what we're trying to lay before Parliament was not a revocation, but an amendment, when we've said the whole law is not fit for purpose and should be removed.
Awula, thank you for your preliminary thoughts. Let me come back in the studio and put this to Shamima. Shamima, have you been privy to some of these concerns by CSOs and concerned citizens that say, or who say we should go a step further and actually just yank this particular LI off our books? You recall in 2022 when it came into force, there was a lot of uproar from CSOs who said allowing miners to go into our biodiversity areas, forest reserves is simply not on. What do you say?
Right. I mean, we continue to take these sentiments and concerns on board, because naturally anybody who is having a conversation about the protection of our water bodies is not doing it for themselves, because water certainly is life. And I think from where I stand personally, you know, if I had all the powers, you know, within my reach, it would be a red alert situation. And I tell you that it is a red alert situation, because our water bodies cannot be allowed to be destroyed, because again, water is the source of all life. And I think we are also worried about the devastation that Galamsey has, you know, had on our water bodies. And now our food supply systems, the vegetables we are eating, the yams, the soil, the negative impact on agricultural lands, the fact that it would take years, decades for soils that have been polluted with mercury and the other such chemicals to restore themselves to their original state, which means that there will always be traces. In fact, the threats of Galamsey to our cocoa industry,
that's right,
where there is very increasing interest in scrutinizing our cocoa products for these trace elements that are seeping into our soils. So we sit on a time bomb, and I can assure all Ghanaians that His Excellency continues to be committed to finding a long-lasting solution to this issue of how to deal with the Galamsey menace, working collaboratively with all stakeholders involved. I'm going to get deeper briefing from the Minister regarding the option of amendment instead of outright repealing or revocation. I don't have that information here, but what I'm happy about is to observe that some of the proposed amendments includes removing the powers of the president to grant liberties, you know, for access to some of those forests. If you see it, there's a clear commitment that the president himself is not interested in being given these powers. And I think that should communicate to us, you know, something. Maybe that is one of the easiest, you know, things to remove, because it is immediately within the remit of the president to take himself out. But perhaps with some of the other provisions, we need to deepen, you know, engagement. Maybe there are some legalities involved. Maybe there are some contractual issues involved. And that's the same philosophy that guided us to revoke all the leases that were given after 7th December, where we received a mandate. Those that were given before 7th December would need some extra work, because we need to figure out what action we can take that will not cost the state some money, if some people decide that they were taking us to court for breach of contract. So that would take some more time, and we would plead with, you know, our dear citizens to come along on the journey with us. The ones that we have immediate power over, we have revoked those licenses, because so many were given in those, you know, dying embers of the previous administration. And I'm sure the ministers responsible are, as we are speaking, reviewing all the other existing contracts. But as I said, I'm going to get a fuller briefing on what the approach is to comprehensively deal with this matter. But at the heart of it, it must be solved. And government must take whatever difficult decision. And I'm speaking as a citizen myself, whatever difficult decisions we must take, because we're raising our children in this country. There's got to be a time where profit-seeking is not the only thing that drives our decision, especially when our collective, you know, our collective, what's the word that is escaping me, future and sustenance is what is at risk. So please be assured that what needs to be done will be done. And we appreciate your commitment to the cause and your consistency in the cause. And we take on board all the issues that you have raised. And I'm sure the minister will be addressing some of those concerns in due time.
Thank you for that. And for also saying that, well, you'll get some more information for us, because I've been listening to Awula speaking for a while now on this particular issue, and it would appear that she along with other CSOs might feel like they were sold a different product, that they were told that this would be repealed entirely, but now we're talking about amendments. And as you, Shamima, say, maybe there are reasons why these are the steps that are being taken, but I'm sure that you'll give us more on that, because if you say you'll do one thing, but it appears that it's taking a different turn, I'm sure, Shamima, you agree that yes, we can raise our eyebrows. But quickly again, Shamima,
don't raise it too high.
Let me quickly chip this in. I've also been listening to Honorable Kofi Boah speaking about Galamsey, and he started off very passionately, and I'm quoting him here. He says he has no qualms naming and shaming when it comes to those who are involved heavily in Galamsey. I mean, should we, does this mean that if it comes to light that there are NDC operatives in the forest, Honorable Boah will name and shame?
He should name them.
There will be no fear.
Why should there be?
Because now that seems to be the conversation that Party A has taken their people out.
Show integrity, we must be consistent, because look, water, the destruction of our water bodies knows no party colors. Right. And I'm saying greed should not be the base, you know, on which we deprive whole communities and the entire nation. And it's no longer the communities of illegal mining that is affected by the negative effects. Because these water bodies run through different regions, come down all the way, you know, so we are all affected. And the food supply, we eat food from those communities.
In fact, we crave it.
The plantains.
When you're coming, bring me this, bring me that, bring me this.
So we are all in the boat.
Absolutely.
And where survival is concerned, I don't think that money or party affiliations or, you know, should inform our approach to it. We must be fair and just. And if we do find, and the president has told every NDC member, you are not allowed to directly or indirectly engage in illegal mining.
So he's saying that if you get caught, don't call me.
You should not even dare to call the president if you get yourself involved in what you know you shouldn't get yourself involved in. And you will have no sympathies from some of us.
Certainly. Thank you for that, Shamima. Rodelin, let me wrap up with you on this one, and then we'll call it a day for the big issue. Galamsey, it is one that it is still a hot topic, and rightly so. In fact, Honorable Kofi Boah says that he describes it as a war.
It is. It is a war. And I think that Honorable Kofi Boah is doing a good job. I think he's actually facing the problems head on.
Do you fear that along the way some of the pressures might be too much?
It's early days yet, yes.
Okay.
So you might have those fears. But then listening to Shamima, if what she's saying is anything to go by, then the president is committed to making sure that this fight is successful. And I think that listening to Awula, I agree with her. We must stop issuing licenses for small-scale mining. there must be a freeze on mining, small-scale mining right now, so that we can audit all the ones that we're giving, maybe in the last 8-10 years, to make sure that everyone is abiding by the rules. After all, Galamsey is not supposed to be a destructive method of getting gold. It's just that some people have decided not to obey the laws. And when they even give them for prospecting, they go digging in there just to destroy stuff. The bad thing about this is that it's happening now everywhere. We are told that the black volta is getting, you know, a problem, the black, whites everywhere, which means even in Upper East, you know, we also have gold.
So these are places where we wouldn't typically hear about
but
this.
even in the Upper East region, it's beginning to affect us. And we know that the food basket is around these people. And it's all coming down to the south, and we are all consuming it. And we are told also by the health authorities that children are being born with defects.
Yeah.
You know?
That's right.
Children are being born, deformities of all types, because of the chemicals that are being used for these things. So it's just not affecting the environment per se, but it's affecting our lives as well. And we should all put our hands on deck. I always say that if it were me fighting Galamsey, I would shoot to kill. Yes.
You would shoot.
I would shoot to kill. You know,
once you enter the forest and you see...
I would shoot to kill if you have been told that, you've been told that between all of you should leave, don't bring this, don't do that, and you still insist on doing the wrong thing, you start shooting their feet, because when you have legs to walk, then you can go back and do Galamsey. You know, sometimes we put a human face on so many things, and we forget the fact that one human being can kill 100 human beings by their acts.
By this Galamsey?
Yes, by their acts.
We are all being
killed slowly by few people who just, by due process of wanting to profiteer from, you know, whatever they're making, decide that the rest of us can go to hell. And I think that it's about time we actually crack the whip.
Very necessary,
you understand?
You say.
So that if after all these interventions that Honorable Kofi Boah is bringing, people are so adamant and still want to go in there and do the wrong things, you have to actually do something worse than what is happening. Yes. You understand? This is how it is, because sometimes people don't understand the reasons why these things are done. But when you start punishing, then they'll start asking, is it bad? Is it this? And then they'll get the message.
Absolutely.
You understand? But this whole idea of we grab them, we go and put them in, and then they give them bail and they come back. And please, I know that the Chinese...
Your final thoughts, Rodelyn, for me, please.
My final thoughts is to humbly ask the Chinese ambassador to also have a conversation with the Chinese.
This is not the first time that plea has been put forth, and the Chinese
who are
actually responded.
First and foremost,
they said that you are a sovereign state. Ghana is a sovereign state. If their citizens come over to your land and disobey your rules, you have the ultimate power to deal with them.
We can only deal with the Chinese if under the table they are not using that against us.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see what you mean.
I
see what you mean. I'm being counted down. Just 1 minute, please.
What I'm happy about, again, is to reiterate the fact that this LI 2462, that is the amendment to the LI, specifically is about revoking the authority of the president to approve mining in forest reserves. I think it is a clear... That's what...
Who will be in charge of giving those...
So it's already there, but I'm saying that the fact of the matter, the president's authority has been revoked, or is being proposed to be revoked by the amendment. And I think it's a clear testament to anybody else who might want to engage in illegality to be forewarned.
Thank you for that, Shamima.
You know, to be forewarned.
Thank you. We'll get into this some more when as it unfolds.
The minister is there, but you know, there's also a proposed decentralization of the licensing regime.
So all right,
I mean, if you
want to hear.
Thank you so much.
And let me just add that by
30 seconds for me, Shamima.
So the decentralization envisages DISEC as the lead agency with all key stakeholders in every district responsible for approving licenses and ensuring that those licenses are not approved for, you know, forest reserves close to water bodies, and they will be responsible for the enforcement together with the community.
So
this is how different our approach is. Decentralize the process so people can own their accountability and ensure that the right things is done. Because if you go and destroy your own water,
Shamima, once a journalist, always a journalist.
It's early days.
Thank you so much.
I will be holding you to
Shamima Muslim,
and you'll be right too.
Is a deputy presidential spokesperson, also a journalist. Rodalyn Imorayana is a public interest advocate. It's always very exciting when the ladies take center stage right here on The Big Issue. Thank you so much for sticking with us. There is so much more happening on New Day this morning. Do be sure to cash out. It is *439#. We'll see you after the break.
Thank you.